Half of the victims this week in the Tunis massacre were tourists, highlighting, of course, the vulnerability of travelers, American and otherwise, around the world. Some cruise lines have even canceled their trips to Tunisia. On Facebook, MSC Cruises wrote that they're canceling, quote, all remaining summer 2015 calls in Tunisia. And Costa Cruises, which is owned by Carnival, said that all next calls in Tunisia for the upcoming cruises over 2015 will be suspended. Let's talk more about this. Joining me now, maritime lawyer and expert in this industry, Jim Walker. Jim, it's good to have you with us because this is not the first time there has been a concern about safety, especially for cruise travelers in the Mediterranean region.
No, I'm a history major, and if you go back over the past 20 or 30 years, you see a trend of violence against cruise passengers. You know, 2 years ago, CNN did a really good story in which they uncovered a captive al-Qaeda operative who had encrypted information. And the information, once it was deciphered, indicated that al-Qaeda had a plan to hijack a cruise ship, to seize the passengers, hopefully American passengers, and they wanted to put them in orange jumpsuits, execute them in front of video cameras. This would be similar to the Achille Lauro attack, which was back in the 1980s. So there are a number of anecdotal stories that I could tell you about cruise ships being targeted. The threat is there. Tunis was a likely place for something like this to break out. You know, we've heard it was the model state from the Arab Spring, but that's a very relative concept. I mean, to its east, immediately to its east, in Libya is in chaos. So the threat is there, and unfortunately we've seen cruise passengers killed.
Well, let's talk about a different area of the world where many people would consider thinking that something like that could happen. We had from a top U.S. general talk about ISIS recruiting roughly 100 people in the Caribbean, and he named Jamaica, he named Trinidad and Tobago, parts of South America as well, and he had questions about the government's their inability to monitor them once they return. Let's listen to what he said.
If they get back to some of these countries that I've described, it's pretty easy for them to move around. 100 it certainly doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not, but the little countries that they come from, with a total inability to really deal with it.
Should people who are listening to the news and they say, well, I'm not going to the Mediterranean, but Trinidad and Tobago is safe, Jamaica is safe, should they be concerned once they go off into some of these excursions that there might be people there who the government is just not aware of?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, if you cruise to Jamaica or if you go to any Caribbean port, there's dangers there that most cruise passengers aren't aware of. I mean, the homicide rate in the United States is 5 people per 100,000. In the Caribbean, the Bahamas, for example, is 30 people per 100,000. Down in Honduras, it's 90 people per 100,000. So we're not talking about terrorism. We're talking about criminals targeting busloads and of passengers. We've seen buses of passengers attacked in mass.
So people have to do that research. I hate to cut you off there. They have to do that research before they pick that location. But some startling revelations from that top U.S. general. Jim Walker, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But I thank you so much for your expertise.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Christy?
You know, the House committee investigating the Benghazi attacks wants Hillary Clinton's email server. The big question is, will she turn it over? And how damaging might it be for her if she says no? Oh, we've got